like to go first, Reverend Steve?
Well, I'll go first. Why not? I'm Reverend Dr. Steve Albert. I'm the director of the World Interfaith Network, and we put on every year the Interfaith Awareness Week. And we're in, where are we? Poway, California, which is basically San Diego.
Thank you, Reverend Steve. Reverend Abigail, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Reverend Dr. Abigail Albert. Just call me Abigail. My tradition is New Thought. I am an ordained religious science minister and an interfaith minister and executive director of the Poway Interfaith team, lovingly known as Point. And we're happy to be on with you tonight.
Thank you, Reverend Abigail. Jose, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Jose Olagues. I am a retired Presbyterian pastor, and I have been involved with Arizona Faith Network since its inception. And I was on the board of directors of the former organization before it came Arizona Faith Network. I grew up in an interfaith home, and I still somewhat practice interfaith. I do go to not only Presbyterian churches, but other denominations, and I do go to a synagogue, and occasionally I go to pray with my with my Middle Eastern brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Jose. Would you like to go next, Vanessa?
Okay, yeah, bye. Manek Bhujwala. Bhuj is a city in northwest India where my father's family had settled. And so that's why Bhujwala means from Bhuj, you know. That's the meaning of the last name. And of course, I myself was born and raised in Bombay or Mumbai. And I came to America in 1965 and got my master's in engineering, and then I started working, and I now, of course, I'm retired for many years now and live in Huntington Beach, California.
Thank you so much. And Vanessa, would you like to go next?
Sure. Buenas tardes a todos. My name is Vanessa. I mentioned I'm in San Diego. I was born and raised Catholic, and I like to celebrate the sacred traditions of many, many other faiths. I also like to work within the Catholic Church to change a lot of the things that I think are important and need to be changed rather than leaving my faith tradition. And I'm very excited to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And I'm Vasubandhu. I'm a Buddhist monk, and I also serve Arizona Faith Network as the Interfaith Manager. I'm from Mexico, and I have immigrated to United States 3 years ago. I'm located in San Diego, but I'm working in Arizona. So it's a pleasure to having this time today together, to having this conversation on why it's important interfaith for resilience. Today, I will share with you how we are working in the Arizona Faith Network to build resilience. And we do that through interfaith collaboration. So I wonder, Jose, if you would like to share with us, how has been your experience with Arizona Faith Network? How was Arizona Faith Network before to be AFN? And how happened that transition?
Okay, thank you, Vasu. The predecessor organization of Arizona Faith Network was the Arizona Ecumenical Council, who had a name change, a few years before, but it was the ecumenical gathering of, the Christian churches in Arizona. As a board member, I was part of the movement that moved the organization to not only be Christian, but to be interfaith. And it took a while, but eventually it did come to be. And today we have a number of religious groups that are members of the Arizona Faith Network, including major Christian denominations, Jewish groups, Muslim groups, and many others.
Thank you so much, Jose, for your experience. So we are working with all diverse religions in Arizona. And today's session is called Heat Relief Initiative, and why the journey to build resilience is interfaith. So I will share with you about this initiative that we are working on in Arizona Faith Network. And I would love to know about the experience that you have in your local community. How do you build resilience in your local community? So briefly, the Arizona Faith Network, we are working in something that we call the Heat Relief Initiative. As you know, in the Maricopa County, there is the need to build resilience because the extreme heat that we are living. So Arizona Faith Network, in collaboration with partners from the government and universities, we are building a network to build cooling centers and hydration stations. You can see here in my screen the map of the diverse locations, faith-based locations for the Heat Relief Network. So I will show you a brief video about the work that we are doing, and after that we can have a discussion on that.
Marked the hottest summer on record for Arizona. Right smack dab in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were dealing with the loss of life due to the coronavirus, and we were
And here,
over almost 100 cooling centers down.
The video, because I think the sound was not sharing. So just a moment.
heard part of it.
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
You say,
Summer 2020 marked the hottest summer on record for Arizona. Right smack dab in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were dealing with the loss of life due to the coronavirus, and we were also dealing with extreme heat that was killing so many vulnerable people in our communities. In Arizona, we were down from over almost 100 cooling centers down to less than a dozen here in Maricopa County. And in late 2020 is when Arizona Faith Network got the call from the Heat Relief Network to see if we could, in some way, form, or fashion, participate in serving as a cooling center. Arizona Faith Network, through a cooperation of a coalition of different nonprofits, different partnerships, including with the Heat Relief Network, was able to work with upwards of 10 different faith communities providing heat relief and heat respite throughout the heat season.
Part of what it means to be a church in the downtown is that you will have people on your doorstep in need, and we are then really called, I think, as a church and as Christians to respond to what those needs are. I don't know if you've ever stepped out in the Phoenix heat in 115 degrees, 117. You can't sit anywhere. So as a church, we have this beautiful big hall. We have the opportunity to air condition it, and we can invite people to come inside of our doors, inside the building, and be the church.
When I've sat down to invite faith communities into this work, sometimes there's a hesitation because the need is so great. We are experiencing an affordable housing crisis like we have never seen in Arizona. We have so many people that are experiencing homelessness due to the eviction crisis and the rising cost of living. But I always like to reassure these faith communities that one, they're not alone, and two, we are not trying to solve everything in one day or even through this program. We are just trying to provide help, a hand, some grace, and some dignity in connection to resources.
Majority of the people are unsheltered and they've had to go to the hospital. They've been dehydrated. Some people come in that have medical conditions compounded on top of the heat. So we've assisted in that. As a team, we've helped people get housing. We've helped people who have been in domestic abuses. We've helped, one gentleman was saved. His life was saved because he had diabetes. And with diabetes, you have to check your extremities every day, especially your feet. But he was caught just in enough time to actually save his life, even though he lost part of his extremity. Our assistant that found him was feeling bad because he lost that extremity, and I had to explain to him, you actually saved his life.
I have a vivid memory of someone, in a tent, and he had overdosed plus heat stroke, and that was terrifying. And that's not an uncommon sight out here on the streets. So that was a really big reason for me. It was like, we gotta come together as a community and do something. We really gotta mobilize. And here in Arizona, the need is so incredibly vast. It's hard. It was hard for me this summer with the cooling van because there's so many locations simultaneously that all, had camps of people who maybe couldn't make it to a cooling center at this time. And it was hard for me to be able to hit all these spots. And I think that, one thing that would be really wonderful next summer is trying to replicate that model, have 10 cooling vans, 20, 30, just different groups, all going out there and hitting different spots. And I think that's really the key to, being there for our community in the best possible way.
We as a faith community are called to respond, to help, and to serve our neighbors that are in need. We have space where we can open our doors, where we can invite our neighbors. We have those trusted relationships that are already established in neighborhoods. And two, we have a moral and we have a spiritual mandate to love those that are in need. I think one thing that's been beautiful about this program is watching the different people throughout Arizona come together to help serve our vulnerable communities.
It's just rewarding me. I just like helping people. I just can't stop saying I like helping people. Just to go home and just feel good. You did something for somebody else. Oh, that's awesome.
I think the most rewarding part is just helping those people who come that seem to need so much. They're not very clean and they're very tired and they're hungry, and these are the things that I'm helping them with, and I just get a joy out of helping them.
Our summers are getting hotter. Our heat season is getting longer. And our neighbors are increasingly suffering from many, many socioeconomic issues. If you are interested in getting engaged in the Cooling Center Response Program work, you're invited. Just talk to our staff, sign up on ArizonaFaithNetwork.org. There's always a place for you. Just like we tell any of our Cooling Center guests, you belong here and you are loved. And so we hope you will come, engage, help, and serve so we can continue to make Arizona stronger together.
All diverse religions working together to build resilience in Arizona. So now we open the space for you to share any ideas or any experiences from your local or national community on how you build resilience. So the time is open for you to share. Reverend Abigail, Reverend Steve, Jose, Manek, and Vanessa.
Well, you know that San Diego has a very bad homeless problem also, as does many, many places throughout the country. And the heat that we had for about 2-3 weeks was in the high 90s. Maybe it hit 100 here and there. That was terrible to the homeless community. And the question was, where do they go? Well, now add another 15, 20 degrees to that heat. And I applaud your group for what it's doing. I don't know anybody else that could do it. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I wonder if you may have here in San Diego, in California, any kind of natural disaster or something that the community have need on to build resilience.
Well, in terms of natural disaster, it's not the interfaith group, is meets about once a month at the city hall meeting room, and we have people from several different religions, Christian, Muslim, myself Zoroastrian, and spiritual living, group is another one. And what we do is we invite people from the community to speak about what they are doing, so someone has this homeless related, activities. Some are doing things for people who are, being released from foster homes, and they basically need some kind of a help, guidance to enter into regular society, and so there are several kinds of groups that are doing good work, community work, charity, and we invite them to talk about their program and to give us their particulars, so that any of our council members can wish to help, then we can also help. We join with the city of Huntington Beach to have some kind of when they have like a community program, where several different groups are having their booths in a big park that we have, a central park, and we participate in those kind of joint efforts. We have a day of service that we coordinate. So it's not people just from our council communities, but also there is a website called justserve.org, and so people can choose whatever service project they would like to volunteer on. So 1 or 2 days every year are marked for that, where our council person, in charge, coordinates those projects. And so, we try to be helpful in that way. In the active senior community where I live, I am a part of a emergency preparedness group, that, basically discusses, how we're gonna face earthquake, for example, and what we need to do. And we have some kind of a process, procedures, people involved, what they will do. And so, from both from my local community where I live and from the council, we basically reach out to people who need help. Okay, and then of course, if there is just to let you know that Huntington Beach used to be the headquarters of a white supremacist group called the Skinheads, yeah, many years ago. And so at that time, the mayor, former mayor, etc., Ralph Bauer was one of the leading people. And and they basically asked some of the religious leaders, I think at that time probably it was Christian or maybe Christian and Jewish, to start some, do something about that, to reduce this racial violence that was being done by those guys. I think one person was even killed, or there was some incident. And so, we basically, whenever there is an incident, like recently, there was some flyers being distributed by some racist group, which were anti-Jewish, and so one of our council members, alerted us to that. Myself, I was president at the time, and our Jewish rabbi, about this. So basically, I right away told the rabbi to draft a letter that I can then send out to the council, the city council, about our concern for that, and also I sent it to some local newspapers. So we are there, and whenever there is any incident, anything, we basically try to stand by whichever community, whether it was Muslim or Jewish or whatever. So these are the things that I have been knowledgeable about.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. This is wonderful to see the interfaith collaboration to
You're
build
welcome.
resilience.
You're welcome.
And this is the reflection that I want to invite us today to having the reflection together on why the journey to build resilience is interfaith. For example, something that is very close to my heart is to see that each religion and each diverse faith community sometimes have a specific ways in which approach to support the community. For example, we can see with the Sikh community when they serve the community with food in the langar, or we can see that other communities approach with meditation or things like that. So I always feel that each of us have a specific and unique ways to approach for the well-being of society, and when we put together all these diverse ways, we can build a more sustainable resilience. And that's my ways to feel the interfaith collaboration. But I would love to hear from you, Jose, Vanessa, Reverend Abigail, and Reverend Steve. How do you feel and why you do think is important, not just to be Christians or not just to be Buddhist or Hindus, but be all diverse religions in the journey to build resilience?
Well, I think that if we just take the religion out of the mix and just look at each other as human beings, with one creator, and see each other in a different light. And I think sometimes in our interfaith work, that's what happens. And unfortunately, those people who do not think about interfaith or people of other faiths as being just as wonderful as they are, then it kind of throws everything out the window in a way. In San Diego, we have a homeless problem. And although we don't have the heat that you have in Arizona, like Steve said, we had those few weeks of very high temperatures. And unfortunately, what I'm reading in the paper is they're trying to just take all the homeless off the streets, but where are they going to go? And that just doesn't, where are they going to go? I know they're trying to find places, but I don't know how many people are actually doing that work. I know we had a presentation by a man from the Interfaith Shelter Network, and that's just one of the networks in San Diego that asked the different faith communities around the San Diego County if they would open their doors for at least 2 weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and shelter homeless people. And that was, before COVID, it was a very well-organized, well-run organization, and it still is, but they're still getting started again because they've been shut down for a few years, due to the COVID. And so he spoke to the Poway Interfaith team about, opening if you have a faith community with a big auditorium, can you open your doors for a few weeks? And I remember years ago, a synagogue near us did that, and other people did, but I volunteered, although I'm not Jewish, I volunteered over there to help take people, like a family in the morning that has stayed overnight at the synagogue, and take them over to Interfaith Community Services, which is also an organization which finds homes for homeless. So that's another organization in San Diego that is very, it's wonderful. They can find homes for everybody. They will find a place if you call them. So the Interfaith Shelter and Community Services work together. And so the shelter found the places to sleep, and then people would volunteer to take those who are in the shelter or in the faith community, who's ever housing for that time, to Interfaith Community Services, where they provide the network for counseling, job seeking, how to write resumes, how to get find a permanent housing. So they help them on that level. Whereas the shelter helps them just find a place to sleep, get cared for, have food, so there is that communication going on in San Diego. I don't think it's enough, but it's a start. And I think people that care are doing what they can. And, but I think we have a long way to go.
This is wonderful, Reverend Abigail. All the programs that exist with the collaboration of Interfaith. And now I wonder, Jose, if you could share with us your experience with Arizona Faith Network, how Arizona Faith Network have become more inclusive of the diverse religions. You are mute, Jose.
Okay. Am I still muted?
No, you're good.
Okay. Thank you, Vasu. Well, Abigail mentioned volunteering, and of course at the heat centers, it requires more than just one individual. So people are volunteering to be there, not only to provide water, first of all, but provide a place to rest and some food. Some support if we, AFN, cannot help them in some areas, such as housing and other areas, we try to refer them to other organizations that will provide those services. One of the very, very important networks that we have made is working with other organizations that are providing transportation to the heating centers, so that obviously some of the people that need help many do not have transportation, or they may not be close to public transportation. So one of the organizations that is working with us is providing transportation to and from heating centers, not only for the AFN centers, but also for other centers that either the cities or the county are establishing, because there are many more than just AFN, but AFN has the largest number of heating centers in the Phoenix area. And I should mention that Reverend Katie in the video said that when, that 2020 was the hottest summer. Well, it does not compare to what 2023 has been. As you have heard, we had, I think, 29 consecutive days of over 110 degrees. We had one day that we did not have it, and then it has continued to be over 110 for several days. But as I said earlier, it has not been as hot as it was previously with 119, hitting all records that Arizona has ever had. And you are aware that it's not only Arizona that is having warmer days, but this throughout the world now that we're experiencing that. And so my point is that we do need to work with other organizations that can help us to provide the best possible service that we could provide to those that need our assistance. And I must mention that, some of the churches at one point were concerned of how they could have people there on Sundays when worship was going on. But a couple of the churches decided, no, that's not an issue. If they do not, they could worship with them, but if they're not willing to worship, they could be in another area and not in the worship center, so that they could still be in a cool area, an air-conditioned area, and not having to force them to not be in church grounds during Sunday. And I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Jose, for sharing your experience. Really appreciate that. And now we will having a conversation on the following two topics. The first, how we became engaged with interfaith collaboration. So how was the first time in which we engaged with interfaith dialogue and collaboration? When you remember, when was the first time where you connect with somebody who have different religion than you? And following that discussion, we will focus on the topic on intergenerational collaboration, on how we can keep the legacy of all the work that everybody is doing for the next generation, and how we can help that happen for the next generation to continue all the work that we are doing. So the conversation is open on if you would like to share how you became connected with interfaith collaboration. When was the first time when you meet with somebody that have different faith? Reverend Abigail? You are mute, Reverend Abigail.
Well, the first time was Steve and I were reading a local newspaper, and there was a little ad or a little community blip that said, the Baha'is are inviting you to join them at Coco's restaurant to help plan the World Religion Day. So Steve and I looked at each other and said, well, what's a Baha'i? So we decided to go. It seemed like an open invitation. And we went, and we loved the people. They were the sweetest, kindest, gentlest people in the world. And they were planning a World Religion Day. And the Baha'is normally have this the last Sunday of January. So the one lady asked if I would speak on behalf of New Thought. I said, sure. So she had different speakers lined up. So I went, and we had about 30 people show up. And everybody loved it. A lot of good questions. And I was like really touched. And so we had it another year, and 50 to 80 people showed up. And it was that time that the speakers, pretty much the same ones as the first year, got together and said, we need to continue this. And so we said, well, let's meet. And Steve and I had a faith center at that time. And so we met at our place. And that was the beginning of the Poway Interfaith team, that small group. And then we planned our first event, which was Interfaith Summer Nights. And we had a speaker from each tradition come one night and talk about their tradition, what they believe, their values. They brought cultural food. And I kept saying to Steve, I must be a Buddhist. I believe everything the Buddhist speaker is saying. And the next week, I must be a Hindu. I believe everything the Hindus are saying. I must, it just went on. And I realized that I really have found that in the different faith traditions, that there's a core values that come together. And that was such a eye-opener, aha moment for me, that these traditions that were different, that I thought were in actuality very similar to what I believed. And it was just that aha moment in my life that I said, this is where I need to be. We need to be sharing this with everybody. And that was back in 2006 and 2007. And so we've been interfaith proponents and ever since, and it's been a joy. So that was my experience.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's beautiful to bring this experience together. I wonder if you would like to go next, Vanessa?
I'm trying to remember a first time. I don't know what the first time would be, but I love to travel, and I travel sort of uniquely because I typically travel by myself on $10 or $20 a day, living in villages, trying to learn the local language. I'll volunteer at schools and orphanages, just nothing organized, just I see what they need and I just go and try to help them do it. And to date, I've been to 108 countries, and I've lived in Africa, and I've lived in Asia, and I've been in Central America for 6-7 months. And I think it was during my travels that, I've lived in a Buddhist country. I lived in Thailand for a while, and I lived in Senegal for a while. And I think this idea of living in communities where there was so many opportunities to interact personally with people of different traditions really spurred my interest, really influenced my a graduate degree, and influenced a lot of my work as an intercultural trainer. And so it's really, I like to say, infiltrated, my entire life. I used to teach world religions at a university. And so I just really can't imagine my life without these interfaith and ecumenical experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's beautiful to getting to know your experience. Manek, would you like to go next?
Yeah, all right, sure. Basically, I grew up in India, in Bombay, in an integrated neighborhood. Okay, so we had Muslim, Hindu, ourselves. In India, we are known more as Parsis instead of Zoroastrians. Because Parsi means Persians, because we migrated from Persia, and so they usually call us by that name. I have not heard usually them calling us Zoroastrians, But so we already before, without having any interfaith organization, we grew up in that kind of environment. And at that time, this was like in the 40s, 50s, that kind of thing, when Mahatma Gandhi was there as a leader in India, and he was promoting community harmony, all that kind of thing. I used to read from the Gita and from the Muslim Quran and Christian Bible and all that. So that was my, I would say, first introduction to interfaith. We would exchange things on our festival days, like my mother would tell me and to go and deliver a dish, a plate of sweet, some sweet desserts, that kind of, that she would have made with a boiled egg, a banana, that kind of thing, and say, okay, go and take it to our neighbors such and such, and then they would respond on their festival days, thing like that. But then, of course, when I came to United States, I would start by getting invitations to attend a Thanksgiving program, at a church or something, and then I eventually, and then I would, be able invited to talk on a radio talk show and thing like that, but nothing very organized as far as associated. But then in Southern California, I was standing, visiting at the Huntington Beach pier, and there were a bunch of people with candle lights, doing some vigil for some peace, and so I go and join them, and one of them was one of the people, Reverend Peggy Price, from Spiritual Living, and so I got to talking with her, and she said, Manek, why don't you come over and join our Interfaith Council, in Huntington Beach. And so this was, I think, maybe like 2005 or something, because I came back from Northern California in 2004 and all that. So that's how I got, associated with them. And eventually, over some of the few later years, I was also invited to join several other interfaith organizations. And so that's how I got started,
Thank you so much for sharing. It's wonderful to learn from your experiences in India, here in the
Right.
United States. Thank you so much for sharing. And Reverend Steve, would you like to go next?
Well, I'd like to tell you about a pre-interfaith occurrence, which started me on the track of where we are now. And that was when I was 13. I was from a Jewish home and I was bar mitzvahed. And when I was 14 or 15, I picked up a book on the Kabbalah, which is the mystical side of Judaism. And I read it and I was hooked. It was wonderful. And so I went to the rabbi and I said, Rabbi, I'd like to study the Kabbalah. And he said to a 14, 15-year-old boy, you can't. What do you mean I can't? He says, you have to be at least 40 years old to study the Kabbalah. Now, the thinking about that is, in the ancient days, when you hit 40, you had pretty much gone through most of your life. You had grown up, you had gotten married, you had children, you started a business, whatever. And then you had nothing left to do, so you retired, and then you could study Kabbalah. Well, this 14, 15-year-old boy said, no. And I left the synagogue. So I no longer centered only on Judaism, but I began to look at all the different faiths and what they taught mystically. Well, when you look mystically at Muslims, and you look at Sufi, and you look at all the mystical sides of Native Americans and every other, you find so they're all the same. They were so similar. And that began my interest in looking beyond what I was brought up with.
Thank you so much, Reverend Steve. Beautiful experience. Jose, would you like to go next?
Certainly. I'm thinking of what Vanessa mentioned on her travels. I also have done plenty of traveling, but no, I have not been in as many countries as you mentioned, Vanessa. But wherever I am, I always look for worship opportunities in whatever spirituality it could be. And I even attend some gatherings that I do not understand the language at all, but I could sense the spirituality that is there. And I must share with you, I already said that I grew up in an interfaith home, that as a child, we would welcome Shabbat on Friday, and then we would go to church on Sunday. And I must have been 12, 13 before I could tell the difference. Because as far as I'm concerned, it is the same creator God that we were worshiping. And I continue to do that. But what else was I going to say? Well, and I do that, but for me, it's the spirituality that sometimes doesn't need the actual oral language. It could just be, the actions, the body movement, the using of the hands, the kneeling down, or whatever that tells me that there is spirituality there.
Thank you so much.
I know what I was going to say. I
Yes.
remember. Once I was chastised by someone that was not a friend, but a knowledge, when I shared that I had attended the synagogue the previous Friday. And he knew I'm a Presbyterian pastor. And he says, how could you have done? That's sacrilegious. Why would you want to go to a synagogue when you're a Christian pastor? And, I was not going to fight with him, but I said to him, you have to remember, he's a Christian. You have to remember that without Judaism, there is no Christianity.
Thank you so much, Jose, for this experience. It's very, very sacred. Thank you so much, each of you, for sharing your experience. It's very sacred to having this conversation and sharing our experiences. I would like to share with you that when I was 18, I met the Interfaith movement 10 years ago. I'm 28. So when I was 18, I have learned from the diverse religions and how to live in harmony. And part of my journey is also working with the Arizona Faith Network, and especially and specifically in this program of the Cooling Center or Heat Relief, because I have been working in the sites, in the locations that we have. So I'm able to experience this opportunity to feel the power of the diversity and the power of interfaith collaboration. So for me, it was when I was very young, when I connect with interfaith. Right now, also part of my interfaith journey is that my husband is Muslim, my mother is Mormon, my Mexican family is Catholic, and the American family is evangelical. So all the time being able to having this interaction through interfaith. So now our conversation will focus on how we can help the next generation to continue the legacy that we do for the work that we do right now. So any ideas that you may have for help the young people and the next generation to continue interfaith collaboration? For example, I would like to share with you that sometimes I feel that young people have the opportunity to participate more actively in the spaces of interfaith, to be able to open more positions, even for example, for a job in a interfaith organization for young people. So the conversation is open for any idea that you may have.
Vasu, I know that you are doing a lot of that on trying to reach our younger brothers and sisters. And I really see the work that you have done. I have worked with young people. I was a mission advisor for a young group at a large Presbyterian church when I was going to seminary. And then I was the youth director for another large congregation, Presbyterian congregation in San Francisco. So for me, it is just absolutely delightful to talk to young people and they ask about different things related to religion. So, I think we need to do that. But like Vanessa, I am going to leave you very shortly because I also had another commitment.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jose.
Okay.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Any other comments that you may have? Reverend Steve, Manek, Reverend Abigail?
Well, the Power Interfaith team has had youth panels. We've had different youth, young people share their faith, share their ideas on different topics. And I think one of the things that we haven't pursued very religiously is inviting youth to become members of Point. And I think part of that, and I'm wondering, and this is just a wondering, is that, the youth have school, they've got, up until the 2022, 23, maybe college. Then they have work, then they need somebody, get married, or a partner. That they've got so much to do between, 18 and 40 that we're finding that people over 40 have more time to commit to, something like the Power Interfaith team. We're just, unless we have, like I said, unless we have youth panels or youth discussion that we focus on the youth and give them something that they can talk about or they choose. In fact, we had a panel where we asked youth, what would you like to share? Which was very successful. But they don't stay with us. And I think maybe because they don't want to be around old people. And the other thing is old people don't really allow them to be themselves. I think that was one of the things that I think with Sorry, that Johnny was part of the group in our NAME presentation 2017, that once a younger person comes into an ongoing organization, some of the people in the organization don't really want their opinions or don't want to give them responsibility. And I think sometimes the youth feel put off by that. And so there needs to be a way for the elders and the youth to come together and respect one another. The elders have the wisdom, of course, they've had experience, and yet sometimes they think they have all the knowledge, but they need to listen to new ideas coming up with the youth. So it really goes on both ends. Both the youth and the elders need to come together and talk. And how can we work together, So I think it's an ongoing challenge, at least for Point, to bring in the youth. And we just had our Power Interfaith team program before this one. And we talked a little bit about, how one of our programs was we matched up youth, different faith. One of our members, Yusef Miller, said his daughter was matched up with a girl from the Sikh tradition. And so they both went to each other's worship services and got to know one another and saw how the other one worshiped and stuff. So that was a beautiful thing to do. And I think that needs to happen more often too. And maybe that that would be the emphasis to bring in the youth when they can see people of different traditions and experience their rituals and worship. And maybe they'll be more interested in belonging to a bigger organization that has a lot of faith. It's ongoing, and I think every organization has to find the right path for them, because I don't think there's any right one way to get that done. So that's just my thoughts.
Thanks for sharing. I also feel the responsibility that I have for helping my generation to honor the wisdom of older generations. And I always want, and I always feel that I want to learn everything that older generations have done for me to continue that work and to continue the legacy. So thank you so much for sharing that. Any other comments that you may have, Manek or Dr. Steve?
Well, taking what Abigail said, as old as we become, we typically have more resources to do things, whether it's to buy supplies for an activity or to help a young person with tuition or registration or whatever. And I think the youth needs to understand, as you just said, hey, these old people are not dumb. They've been through some experiences that I can learn from. And so there's this meshing of the old and young, not as individuals, but for both to understand what the other one has and needs. So if I know a young person has the ability to do some of the technical work, like I know you do, in fact, Vasu put onto the Interfaith, the World Interfaith Network, the interpretation for closed caption, or you have all flags from the different countries. So if someone comes on, they can pick their flag, and there's everything's translated into the subject, into that language. I don't have that ability. I don't have that. But I want to learn from you. And at the same time, I might have a couple bucks more than you. So I'm taking you to lunch. So there's got to be we work together as a team.
That's so beautiful, this experience. Thank you so much, Robert and Steve. It's beautiful to see how each of us, each generation, have specific ideas, specific contributions. And when we put together our specific contributions, we can make better. So I wonder, Manage, if there is any idea that...
Well, what I know is that, one way to get young people involved in even your own local organization or interfaith is to, kind of involve them on some kind of service project, like when we have those day of service, we invite the community, young, old, come together, to do some work, yard work, or something in the garden or park or library or something. The other thing is that we should kind of get them to take on positions like, in our North American Interfaith Network, where I am also on their board. We have recently reorganized, and we have brought in some young people to put to the leadership positions, and so, of course, it's not easy, for them and us, because, they have to start learning things. We have to start learning things, and trusting them and all that. Even in my own Zoroastrian organization, we do the same. We have like a youth coordinator, who is part of the executive committee. And when we organize certain programs, of like sports or things like that, we have youth people attracted to take part in sports. We have youth conferences. We call them youth congress. Every 2 years or 3 years or something, where it's mainly for the youth. Uh, the age group kind of range kind of varies sometimes, but we try to do that. And just recently in my own organization, I was telling we had a general body meeting. I was proposing that we should have one meeting where only the youth are going to speak about what are their challenges. We live in this society today, and we need to understand from them, what they are going through, what are their problems and challenges and all that. And the adults will just listen. And so because that's the only way we will know from them, and that's not easy, because again, the young people may not want to say something that might offend their parents or some other society, because everywhere we have some orthodox minded people and some reform minded people, and so these things. So we have to do some kind of anonymous way of for them to be able to put in like a suggestion box or something, if they are afraid of that kind of thing. So there are several things we can basically do. And of course, going to different places of worship. Hopefully even that doesn't guarantee that there'll be youth over there, but sometimes we succeed in that, kind of thing.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for your ideas and also for the work that you do, to including.
Yeah. In the North American Interfaith Network, we also offer scholarship, to young people. And so that's another way we attract, young people to get involved with interfaith.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I would like to share a little bit of what we are doing in Arizona Faith Network on this topic. So I feel also the interconnection with the youth and the building resilience in our communities. So this is part of the work that we do, and we have a group dedicated for the participation of young people. And this is our group, or young people in AFN. So I always feel that building resilience is also part of the continuity of how we want to make sustainable the interfaith movement and our organizations, and sustainable with human resources and also with finances and with ideas. So thank you so much for having this conversation, because this helps us to together to find the ways in we improve and we can go forward in our communities and our organizations. I really hope that we can still always connected with you, Manek, and I always connected with you, Reverend Stephen Abigail, with you and your advice and your ideas and your experiences. I'm able to also bring all these experiences and ideas to the work that I'm doing in Arizona. And for Arizona, it's very important to having partners in other states here in California, because we together build the interfaith movement. And even that we are focusing in Arizona, is also important to learning on the experiences of other groups in other areas. So thank you so much for having this conversation and for let us host this conversation today.
Vasu, I have only one question for you.
Thank you.
Now that you have lived in San Diego, away from the heat in Phoenix, are you really going to move back after Johnny finishes school?
Thank you for this question. Yes, we have family in Arizona, and we are feeling so much love for Arizona. Working with the community connects me very deeply with Arizona. So yes, we are planning in 2 years to coming back to Arizona. But always I feel also the love for California. Now I'm living here.
Okay.
We'll miss you.
Thank you, me too. And we are
Yeah.
very, very close with Manek too.
I was intrigued by the name Vasu Bandhu. It sounds like an Indian name. So is that the name of your organization or is that your name?
Is the name given by the Buddhist community on my ordination.
Oh, I see.
Yes. I'm from Mexico, so this is not my legal name.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, you know.
These are my name.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being part of this. Interfaith Awareness Week would not be the same without you, Vasu.
Thank you. I really do appreciate. And to finish our conversation today, I wonder if there is something else that we can share for this conversation. I have my question on how do you feel about next steps for our collaborations?
It's wide open.
It is wide open. We'd love to. Yeah,
No limit.
no limits.
Yes. Thank you. And Manik, do you have any ideas, any comments, or how we can move forward in our collaborations?
Well, I think, you know, it's all, you can always keep in touch with each other by email or, you know, and you know, I'm sure Reverend Albert and Reverend Abigail, you know, they will be, you know, maybe they have some newsletter that goes out or some notices, you know, that they will keep us informed. And that way we can always, you know, correspond with each other and share with each other.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I put out a newsletter every week, Manik. You're welcome to be on it if you'd like to receive it. And Vasu, you're on it, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
And so, Manik, you're welcome to be on the Power Interfaith Team newsletter. We have what we do for Point and other things going on in San Diego. So it's up to you.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I would be happy to know, keep in touch, you know, to know what's going on.
So if you do you have Steve's email, you can send it to him and I can put you on. You have Matt, okay. Then I can put you on. Okay, that would be great.
Right.
And Manik, I have a question. I would love to connect with the Zoroastrian community in Arizona. I wonder if you may have any contacts in Arizona.
In Arizona, not really. You know, I know that there are some Zoroastrians in Arizona, but I have not been in close contact with them. But that's about all I can say.
Thank you so much. And you are always welcome, Manik, Reverend Abigail, and Reverend Steve, to joining us in the Arizona Faith Network activities. Our activities are online. I will share my screen again with you to show you. So in the main website, you will see in this part the calendar. So in the calendar, we put all the activities.
Okay.
So you are able to join in us online when you have some time.
Sure.
And you can share with us any experience so we can learn also from you, and also we can share with you our experiences in Arizona.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
You can share anything but the heat.
Yes, the heat. And that's something very unique in the national arena, right? Arizona. So I think, yes, that's very unique. And I think that's something that Arizona Faith Network can share with the national community. And also we can learn from others. I always wonder, Reverend Steve, Manik, and Abigail, about the experiences on our partners in, for example, Saudi Arabia or other countries that experience also extreme heat, how they build resilience in
Yeah.
those areas.
And Reverend Albert usually used to bring virtual dinners or something, right?
All the time.
Okay.
So do you have something now, Steve?
I don't think so. Well, first of all, I am. Okay, hold on.
We don't have the beam up technology yet,
Uh,
like on Star Trek, they beam up.
Oh, yes. Beam me up, Scotty.
Right.
hold on, don't go anywhere.
Finding some food.
All right. I'll take your leave. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you
Manic.
so much,
Nice to
Bye.
see you again.
Nice
Wait
to
a
see
talk
you.
minute,
with
wait a
you.
minute,
Bye.
wait a minute, there you go.
Oh,
There
there
it
you go.
is.
See, yeah. Yes. Now I can enjoy the dinner,
Yes.
Enjoy some dinner.
Okay.